Greetings, friends around the world, and welcome. This is Caravan to Midnight, the Friday night edition. Good grief. The week just went and it was gone. So, I'm already looking forward to tomorrow night's ARC Midnight broadcast from 9 to midnight Central Time. Coming down over the XD satellites. For information, you can go to klif.com, klif.com. You can listen to the live stream there. And as we are on the XDS satellite now, anybody who would like ARC Midnight to come into your town, just contact the radio station of your choice that has the most boring stuff on Saturday nights and tell them, hey, you need to take a look at this, and we'll come on maybe on your local station. It'd be great. Well, the news is absolutely all over the place today, and not very much of it is good. Let's start with the most alarming volley of news bits. Sinkhole swallows houses in Florida. 21 fighting dogs seized in Dallas. 20 million mosquitoes to be released in Fresno. Home with risk of death attracting buyers. And working more than 55 hours a week raises risk of heart problems. That's obviously nonsense. We exceed that all the time. I'm 120 over 80. We're good, okay? Now, age 37, too old for clubbing? Well, yeah. Yeah, that's it. How about 47 or 57? Out of their minds on ecstasy at the clubs. People will say, poor old tosser. That's not a good thing, not at all. The Finns are getting ready. Vast network of underground tunnels and bunkers as the Soviets get, or maybe they're still the Soviets, the Russians are getting mad again. Well, and the fishermen are mad. Yes, fishermen express fury as Fukushima plant set to release radioactive material into ocean. Have to get this from telegraph.co.uk. Have to, by Julian Ryall. Julian Ryall, you know, in Tokyo. R-Y-A-L-L. Julian Ryall. Yeah, it's true. Local residents and environmental groups have condemned a plan to release radioactive tritium from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean. Well, apparently they know a little bit more about this stuff than your average American, because, you know, when tritium gets into the water, it's not going anywhere. It's staying. Once tritium is released into water, it's there. It will not be extracted. It will remain there. In an interview with local media, Takashi Kawamura, chairman of TEPCO, said the decision has already been made. He added, however, that the utility is waiting for approval from the Japanese government before going ahead with the plan and is seeking the understanding of local residents. The tritium is building up in water that's been used to cool 3 reactors that suffered fuel meltdowns after cooling equipment was destroyed in a magnitude 9 earthquake and resulting tsunami that struck northeast Japan in March 2011 and, incidentally, triggered the activation of Caravan to Midnight. I'm serious. Now get this. You want a number? Here's a number. The numbers don't lie, right? Around 770,000 tons of highly radioactive water is being stored in 580 tanks at the site. Many of the contaminants can be filtered out, but the technology does not presently exist to remove tritium from water. Quote, Eileen Miyoko Smith, an anti-nuclear campaigner with Kyoto-based Green Action Japan. This accident happened more than 6 years ago, and the authorities should have been able to devise a way to remove the tritium instead of simply announcing they're going to dump it into the ocean. Eileen, I completely agree. Why don't you slap somebody upside the head over there with one of their own? Never mind. I'll get you in trouble. And myself as well. They say that it will be safe because the ocean is so large, so it will be diluted. But that sets a precedent that can be copied, essentially permitting anyone to dump nuclear waste into our seas, she told the Telegraph. Fishermen who operate in waters off the plant say the release of radioactive material will devastate an industry that is still struggling to recover from the initial nuclear disaster. Tanji Tachiya, Head of a local fishing cooperative told Kyoto News, releasing tritium into the sea will create a new wave of unfounded rumors, making all our efforts for naught. I'm beginning to wonder if all our efforts are for naught anyway, but to hell with that, we're going to forge ahead. We'll just crack on and see where we wind up. You know, I thought you might be interested in this. Come on, give it to me. You know, fake news this and fake news that and fake news the other. Well, get this. New York Times editor John Swinton. All journalists are prostitutes. There is no such thing as an independent press. Not one of you dare write your honest opinions. If you did, you know it would never appear in print. If I allowed my honest opinions to appear in one issue of my paper before 24 hours, my occupation would be gone. The business of the journalist is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. We are the tools of rich men behind the scenes. We are the jumping jacks. They pull the strings and we dance. We are intellectual prostitutes. There is no such thing at this date of the world's history in America as an independent press. You know it and I know it. I am paid weekly for keeping my honest opinion out of the paper I am connected with. Others of you are paid similar salaries for similar things, and any of you who would be so foolish as to write honest opinions would be out on the street looking for another job. The business of the journalist is to destroy the truth. You know it, and I know it. And what folly is this toasting an independent press? John Swinton, probably in 1880. It's really pretty amazing. Nothing has changed. For some reason, we decided it would be okay to trust them again. But we cannot. We simply cannot. Have you heard of this, by chance? The cataclysmic devaluation of the bolivar in Venezuela? All would-be socialists out there, listen up, because this is where socialism eventually takes you. The brutal repression in the South American country and the devaluation of this bolivar, their currency, now go hand in hand. State security agencies are increasingly demanding bribes in relatively strong Colombian pesos to release unjustly detained prisoners, or rather, protesters. Unjustly detained protesters. It's already public knowledge that the Bolivarian National Guard and the Bolivarian National Police take advantage of opposition protests to arrest innocent young people, torture them. Well, let's be clear on that. They rape the girls, and they use the, the hand crank generators and the little wet sponges and the makeshift electrodes on the guys' genitals. That's what they do. That's what they mean when they say torture them. They don't mean tickle torture them. They don't mean take a feather and Gucci Gucci. No, they rape the girls and put electrodes on the testicles of the guys. Nice, huh? And if you think it can't happen here, it does happen here. More on that in future. They then request bribes of between $500 and $1,000 US to free them. However, in border states, they're also increasingly charging such payments in Colombian pesos. The opposition deputy for Táchira State, Franklin Duarte, announced that the court bailiff in the region has demanded payments in foreign currency of the relatives of those detained in protests. And that's really pretty much all there is, except maybe this part. The head of the Táchira sheriffs, Ever Beltran, E-V-E-R. maybe it's just Ever Beltran, is charging 80,000 Colombian pesos, approximately 24 US dollars, to those seeking to bail out their loved ones. We make this complaint so that the presiding judge and president of the judicial circuit, Yorli Perez, take measures, said Duarte. He explained that the sheriff is interfering in the cases and that merely to have the possibility of a bail hearing, guarantors of the relatives must pay $24, a small fortune given today's economic realities in Venezuela. The young detainees must not only face the possibility of being, well, government slaves. Now, there is a bunch of fake news out there. Some of it, in particular, there's one called Your News Wire. You can't really tell if it's satire or if it's real because they're always coming up with some deathbed confession of somebody. So I really wish people would quit doing that. It's bad enough that Ministry of Smoke and Mirrors can't be trusted for anything, but I implore anyone out there who's listening to this broadcast that if you're engaging in satire, believable satire, don't do it. The waters are muddied enough. Instead, devote your energies to producing factual news. It's in short supply now. We don't need any more satire. The whole damn country is nothing but a satirical farce. Stop that at once and regain your credibility as an actual journalist rather than just a putz having fun for clicks. Okay? Now, that's why this is a problem. And you know, I just don't believe these people are credible. I don't. There are two stories by these characters. One of them is Haiti official who exposed the Clinton Foundation found dead in Miami. Now, I think this is true. He was a fierce critic of the Clinton Foundation's activities in the Caribbean island, where he served as Director General of the government's Economic Development Agency. And according to Aberwine, a paltry 0.6% of donations granted by the international donors to the Clinton Foundation with the express purpose of directly assisting Haitians actually ended up in the hands of Haitian organizations. 9.6% ended up with the Haitian government, and the remaining 89.8%, or $5.4 billion, was funneled to non-Haitian organizations. See, that's the thing. This appears to be true, not just because it slams the Clintons, but because this information has appeared before. But then there's another one about a CIA agent, Malcolm Howard, 79 years old, having made a series of astonishing claims since being released from hospital in New Jersey and told he has weeks to live. This is actually published July 13, 2017, but it seems oddly familiar. But it's written realistically, so I'm just putting these disclaimers on here just in case. 79-year-old New Jersey native says he worked on the CIA operation they dubbed New Century between May 97 and September 2001, during a time he says CIA was still taking orders from the top. Mr. Howard said he was part of a cell of 4 operatives tasked with ensuring the demolition was successful. And he says the World Trade Center 7 operation is unique among his demolitions, as it's the only one that we had to pretend wasn't a demolition job. He claims he had no problem going through with the deception at the time because when you're a patriot, you don't question the motivation of CIA or the White House. You assume the bigger purpose is for a greater good. They pick good, loyal people like me, and it breaks my heart to hear the stuff talk. But he admits that now, looking back, something wasn't right. No good has come from this. This isn't the America we envisioned. But explaining how the building was brought down, Mr. Howard said it was a classic controlled demolition with explosive. We used superfine military-grade nanothermite composite materials as explosives. The hard part was getting thousands of pounds of explosives, fuses, and ignition mechanisms into the building without causing too much concern. But almost every single office in the Building 7 was rented by CIA, the Secret Service, or the military, which made it easier. He explains that Building 7 was loaded with explosives in strategic places in the month leading up to the day that changed the course of American history. On September 11, while the North and South Towers burned, fuses were ignited in World Trade Center 7, and nanothermite explosions hollowed out the building, destroying the steel structure, removing the reinforcements, and allowing the office fires to tear through the rest of the building, hollowing it out like a shell. Mr. Howard and his colleagues had done their job. Here's the quote: "When the building came down, it was such a rush. Everything went exactly to plan. It was so smooth. Everybody was evacuated. Nobody was hurt. In WTC 7, we were celebrating. We kept watching replays of the demolition. We had whiskey and cigars out, and then all of a sudden, the strangest thing happened. We all started to worry that it looked a bit too smooth. We watched the tape again and again and again, and we started to get paranoid. It looked like a controlled demolition. We thought, S-word, people are going to question this. And then we heard that people from the street were reporting that they heard the explosions during the afternoon, when we were told that BBC botched their report and announced to the world that the building collapsed 20 minutes before it actually did. At that point, we really thought that the jig was up." Well, we know it was a fraud, don't we? Well, you can't say that. Well, I have said it. It was a fraud, like most of this. It's deeply disturbing. It really is. You might be interested to hear this. "We do these things because they're easy. Our all-consuming dependence on debt." Authored by Charles Hugh Smith via Of Two Minds blog. A world in which we do these things because they're easy has one end state: collapse. On September 12, 1962, President John F. Kennedy gave a famous speech announcing the national goal of going to the moon by the end of the decade. In a memorable line, Kennedy said we would pursue the many elements of the space program, quote, "not because they are easy, but because they are hard." End quote. Our national philosophy now is we do these things because they're easy, and relying on debt to pay today's expenses is at the top of the list. What's easier than tapping a line of credit to buy whatever you want or need? Nothing's easier than borrowing money, especially at super low rates of interest. We are now totally, completely dependent on expanding debt for the maintenance of our society and economy. Every sector of the economy, households, businesses, and government, all borrow vast sums just to maintain the status quo for another year. Compare buying a new car with easy, low-interest credit and saving up to buy the car with cash. How easy is it to borrow $23,000 for a new $24,000 car? You go to the dealership, announce all you have to put down is a trade-in vehicle worth $1,000. The salesperson puts a mirror under your nose to make sure you're alive, make sure you haven't just declared bankruptcy to stiff previous lenders, and if you pass those two tests, you qualify for a 1% rate auto loan. You sign some papers and drive off in your new car. Scrimping and saving to pay for the new car with cash is hard. You have to save $1,000 each and every month for 2 years to save up the $24,000, and the only way to do that is to make some extra income by working longer hours and sacrificing numerous pleasures, being a shopaholic, going out to eat frequently, $5 coffee drinks, jetting somewhere for a long weekend, etc. The sacrifice and discipline required are hard. What's the payoff in avoiding debt? Not much. After all, the new auto loan payment is modest. If we take a 5-year or 7-year loan, it's even less. By borrowing $23,000, we get to keep all our fun, treats, and spending pleasures, and we get the new car, too. At the corporate level, it's the same story. Borrow $1 billion and use it to buy back shares, increasing the value of the corporation shares by increasing profit margins, and actual value is hard. Boosting the share price with borrowed money is easy. It's also the same story with politicians and the government. Cutting anything is politically painful. So let's just float a bond. Borrow money to pay for what once was paid out of tax revenues, maintaining parks, repaving streets, funding pensions, etc. Just float a bond. This dependence on expanding debt for maintaining the status quo is a global trend. Debt is exploding in China in every sector, and the same is true in other nations, developed and developing alike. Borrowing more money from the future is easy, painless, and requires no trade-offs, sacrifices, or accountability until the debt-addicted economy collapses under its own weight of debt service and insolvency. And it appears the United States of America Incorporated may be headed toward insolvency. You've probably heard by now, $400 billion spent by the feds in 1 month. $400 billion. People keep repeating various versions of the story that debt doesn't matter because future growth will outgrow the skyrocketing debt, or inflation will make it all manageable, or that central banks will do whatever it takes to make sure everyone has enough money to service their debt burdens, negative interest rates, helicopter money, etc., etc., etc. We want to believe in financial magic because we want things to remain easy. Borrowing from the future is easy. Making sacrifices and being accountable is hard. But eventually the cost of servicing even low interest rate debt squeezes spending. Eventually capital tires of chasing negative interest rate bonds. No, I get it. Eventually capital tires of chasing negative interest rates. Eventual lenders realize that leverage has skyrocketed along with the debt, and the risk is piled up like dry tinder in a drought-weakened forest. Central banks realize they can't even limit the expansion of their balance sheets without triggering a panic that would collapse all the debt-based contraptions and manipulated markets they've held aloft with limitless liquidity. If you believe that going from a total debt burden, government and personal debt per household being 79% of median household income, to debt per household being 584% of median household income doesn't matter and it will have no consequences, you believe in magic. Unfortunately, thinking something will be easy forever and have no consequences is not the same as the real world of skyrocketing debt and leveraging having no consequences. A world in which we do these things because they're easy has one end state: collapse. Believing that debt has no consequence, that the status quo is permanent, that all the promises based on soaring debt can be paid, it's all an appealing fantasy, magical thinking at its most enchanting. Believe these fantasies at your own risk. Now this is from Chicago Tribune. Peter W. Smith, GOP operative who sought Clinton's emails from Russian hackers, committed suicide, records show. By Catherine Skiba, David Heinzman, and Todd Lighty, contact reporters, Chicago Tribune. A Republican donor and operative from Chicago's North Shore who said he had tried to obtain Hillary Clinton's missing emails from Russian hackers killed himself in a Minnesota hotel room days after talking to the Wall Street Journal about his efforts, public records show. In mid-May, in a room at a Rochester hotel used almost exclusively by Mayo Clinic patients and relatives, Peter W. Smith, 81, left a carefully prepared file of documents, including a statement police called a suicide note, in which he said he was in ill health and a life insurance policy was expiring. Days earlier, the financier from suburban Lake Forest gave an interview to the Journal about his quest, and it began publishing stories about his efforts in late June. The Journal also reported it had seen emails written by Smith showing his team considered retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, then a top advisor to Republican Donald Trump's campaign, an ally. Flynn briefly was President Trump's national security advisor and resigned after it was determined he had failed to disclose contacts with Russia. At the time, the newspaper reported Smith's May 14 death came about 10 days after he granted the interview. Mystery shrouded how and where he had died, but the lead reporter on the stories said on a podcast he had no reason to believe the death was the result of foul play and that Smith likely had died of natural causes. However, the Chicago Tribune obtained a Minnesota state death record filed in Olmsted County saying Smith committed suicide in a hotel near the Mayo Clinic at 1:17 p.m. on Sunday, May 14. He was found with a bag over his head with a source of helium attached. A medical examiner's report gives the same account without specifying the time, and a report from Rochester police further details his suicide. In the note recovered by police, Smith apologized to authorities and said that no foul play whatsoever was involved in his death. He wrote that he was taking his own life because of a recent bad turn in health since January 2017 and timing related to life insurance of $5 million expiring. He'd been staying at the hotel for several days, had extended his stay at least once, but was expected to check out on the day his body was found. "Tomorrow is my last day," Smith told a hotel worker on May 13, while he worked on a computer in the business center printing documents, according to the police reports. One of Mr. Smith's former employees told the Tribune he thought the elderly man had gone to the famed Mayo Clinic to be treated for a heart condition. Mayo spokeswoman Ginger Plumbo said Thursday she could not confirm Smith had been a patient, citing medical privacy laws. The Journal story stated that on Labor Day weekend last year, Smith assembled a team to acquire emails the team theorized might have been stolen from the private server Clinton had used while Secretary of State. Smith's focus was the more than 30,000 emails Clinton said she had deleted because they related to personal matters. A huge cache of other Clinton emails were made public. Smith told the Journal he believed the missing emails might have been obtained by Russian hackers. He also said he thought the correspondence related to Clinton's official duties. Smith had a history of doing opposition research, the formal term for unflattering information that political operatives dig up about rival candidates. For years, former Democratic President Bill Clinton was Smith's target. The wealthy businessman had a hand in exposing the Troopergate allegations about Bill Clinton's sex life, and he discussed financing a probe of a 1969 trip Bill Clinton took while in college to the Soviet Union, according to Salon magazine. Now, an employee with the Rochester Cremation Services, the funeral home that responded to the hotel, said he helped remove Smith's body from his room and recalled seeing a tank. The employee, who spoke on the condition he not be identified because of the sensitive nature of Smith's death, described the tank as being similar in size to a propane tank on a gas grill. He did not recall seeing a bag that Smith would have placed over his head. He said the coroner and police were there and that he didn't do a lot of looking around. And here's his quote: "When I got there and saw the tank, I thought I've seen this before," and was able to put two and two together. An autopsy was conducted. According to the death record, the Southern Minnesota Regional Medical Examiner's Office declined a Tribune request for the autopsy report, released limited information about Smith's death. A spokeswoman for AXA, Equitable Life Insurance Company, listed in documents recovered by police as Smith's insurance carrier had no immediate comment. So anyway, it could not be determined how the use of helium, an odorless and tasteless gas that's non-toxic, did him in, other than displacing the oxygen in his lungs. The helium does not have a direct effect. A bag over someone's head depletes the oxygen for the person and causes death. But anyway, so his death is suspicious. And then there's that thing about the Haitian protester. And then, I decided to look and see, well, life insurance policy, will a life insurance policy pay off in the case of suicide? And the answer is some do and some don't. There's this thing from the Telegraph. It goes back a number of years, but it came up when I was asking that question in a search. And it states here, David Carr, 40, shot himself in his best pinstripe suit after enjoying a last meal of strawberries and a glass of champagne. And he left a detailed diary detailing his intentions to do himself in, written up to 18 months before he did it. However, the inquest heard Mr. Carr appeared to have waited a year to carry out the suicide because of a clause in an insurance policy, which meant it would not pay out if he killed himself within a year of signing up to it. People do strange things, but it gets stranger. I won't labor this much more. DailyCaller.com, all right? Dated yesterday. Dem rep doubles down on conspiracy theory about deceased GOP operative. So it seems Democratic Representative Ted Lieu doubled down on a conspiracy theory about a deceased Republican operative, despite any supporting evidence. Lieu called the death of Republican donor and operative Peter Smith awfully suspicious on Thursday night and stood by that statement today when reached by the Daily Caller. The 81-year-old Smith committed suicide days after talking to the Wall Street Journal about his attempts to obtain Hillary Clinton's emails from Russian hackers during the 2016 presidential campaign. Lou wrote, "You don't need to be a prosecutor to know that someone writing no foul play whatsoever in connection with a death seems awfully suspicious." Well, I think he's right. Just like when Philip Marshall, who wrote The Big Bamboozle, supposedly, killed his kids and his dog and himself. The sheriff's department up there in California, I believe, is where he was. I know it was in Florida, but I think he lost his life in California. Never seen such a detailed dossier on everything. They had everything in a description. They were just trying to bury the fact that, Philip Marshall was rubbed out in what appears to me to be what you call a hit. Why would a man shoot his own dog? You don't do that. I mean, that's weird. That's rare. That's usually done as a message that the entire task is complete. But what a detailed dossier. Everything was in it. I don't think they included what flavor of toothpaste he preferred, but that was about the only thing let out of it. And it just looked like a little bit too much information. All these houses all close together and this Glock 9mm that he's in the hallway, right? Doesn't sit on the couch and shoot himself. No, he's lying in the hallway and the pistol's a little ways away from him. I don't buy it. I really don't. But then again, one more. Hillary Clinton State Department FOIA expert goes after Trump White House. He worked on the response to FOIA request at Hillary Clinton State Department, and now he's using his vast FOIA experience to go after President Trump. This is so stupid. The Justice Department turned over paperwork Thursday morning showing that Attorney General Jeff Sessions didn't tell the FBI about his conversations with the Russian ambassador when he applied for his security clearance. The revelation came because a new watchdog group successfully sued for Sessions' clearance application under the Freedom of Information Act, though the document they got was heavily redacted. The Justice Department says Sessions was not obligated to tell FBI about his conversations with the Russian ambassador because he had them in his capacity as a U.S. Senator. But Austin Evers, Executive Director of American Oversight, the watchdog group that got the DOJ to release the document, said Sessions should have revealed the meetings. And here's his quote. "We're not talking about the ambassador from the Vatican or from Canada," he said. "We're talking about the ambassador from Russia, about whom there is common knowledge that there are significant espionage concerns. You should not get cute with questions from the FBI related to national security." Evers would know. After all, he helped the State Department manage FOIA requests on Benghazi and Hillary Clinton's emails. So using his extensive FOIA experience, he's moved to the other side of those lawsuits, heading a group with 6 attorneys and 3 additional staffers looking to dredge up as much information as possible on the new administration, starting with Sessions. Kind of a smart aleck, too. Evers said, "Through a failure of reading comprehension, they didn't realize we asked for Jeff Sessions' signature block as well. There's nothing on the document that shows that it's Jeff Sessions." I mean, does that even make sense? So anyway, what they're going to do is they're going to continue to harass this president and his staff and just facilitate same old, nothing gets done. What's been done with the so-called Obamacare disaster? Nothing. As Dems rush to endorse single payer, California sounds a warning. Oh no, not that. Nothing's going to happen. This is going to be dragged out until hell freezes over, if they get their way. Dems rush to endorse single payer, and we have discussed what single payer means before. Oh, but there they are. There's somebody out there with a black background sign with a fuchsia block of letters that read single payer now. Soon enough, the Republican Party's 7-year crusade to slay the Affordable Care Act will come to an end. On Thursday, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell unveiled yet another revision of the GOP's fraught repeal and replace legislation, and the controversial bill will either find the 50 Republican votes it needs to pass the upper chamber of Congress in the next few days, or it will perish once and for all. And if it perishes once and for all, you know what that means? It means you're stuck with Obamacare. So if anybody has any Obamacare horror stories or some Obamacare really good stories, send them to info@caravantomidnight.com. Please, no satire, you know what I mean? And I'd really like to hear from people who have had success with Obamacare. I know a lot of stories of people who have had disastrous results with Obamacare, but I'd like to hear some good news stories that are real, okay? Now, we're going to check in with Larry Nichols. Larry Nichols is a person of some controversy, but he brings some good stuff to the party. And just between ourselves, he's not exactly 25, and I want to talk to him while we may.